Happy Thursday, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of AKP Sports Talk. As always, I'm Ari here with Korea. We both had a nice Wednesday in our best bets. Both went 2-0. We had a nice, where we both won the Santa Clara Utah State game with Utah State winning by two. We'll start off with Korea's two best bets. What were your takeaways from your two winners? Where Arkansas State won outright and Santa Clara won or covered in a sweaty finish.
Yeah, going to that Arkansas State game, I mean, it was pretty sweaty. No, it wasn't. I'm going to let you know right now. Louisville was bad. I mean, Louisville was really bad. They can't shoot the ball. I mean, their program is just all over the place. We saw, I think one of their key stars. I forgot his name. There was rumors that he transferred, but then he said he wasn't in the portal and he was just sitting in the crowd. But he's on the team, so Louisville is a complete mess. But Arkansas State, that was a great look. They kept it close throughout that first half, and I was just hoping they would keep it close. But that second half was just all theirs. They ran away with it. They got up to about maybe a 20-point lead with like 3 minutes left. I even called it there. I was like, yeah, Arkansas State won that. That was a pretty sweat-free winner. So that was great to see. Obviously, Arkansas State cover that. We're going to be fading Louisville all season, and yes, that means throughout the ACC as well. This team is going to be horrifically bad, horrendously horrible. And then going to Santa Clara, you mentioned it, very sweaty. Nice to see both of us when you mentioned, Utah State. You had them on the money line, and I had Santa Clara plus 2.5. And I'm glad I had 2.5 because obviously they only covered by two. It was a 2-point game, so I knew it was going to be very close. It was back and forth throughout that whole game. Santa Clara and Utah State pretty much were exchanging the lead, here and there. And so that's what I was kind of hoping for, just that kind of close game. Santa Clara being kind of a home wagon, not really. That was their first home loss of the season, being after going 7-0 at home, and then obviously Utah State, the better team defensively. I knew they were going to give Santa Clara trouble. There were so many lead changes throughout that second half. I saw Santa Clara. I was up high as like 7, and then Utah State come back, and then they get the lead, and then it was just back and forth. But nice to see Santa Clara, cover the 2.5-point line. I mean, it was very close. Like I said, that line was going down all the way to 1.5. So if you did have 1.5, I'm so sorry. But I mean, that line was going down and down, and I knew as soon as and then it started to go back up in Utah State's favor right before it took off, and that's when I knew, okay, maybe they're not going to cover the 1.5-point spread, but maybe 2, but we'll see. And it was very sweaty, but like I said, off of that light, if you did see the end of the game, it was a inbound play where Santa Clara stole it, but the guy, I think it was Ball, I forgot who it was. He threw it back in bounds, and it went over everyone's head. So Santa Clara had a chance to even win that game, but lost by 2. So we'll definitely take those 2-2 day. I will gladly take that, first sweep, in my Palm Springs vacation. But Ari, going back to yours, and like I said, 2-0 day, how'd you do?
Yeah, Pelicans was a little bit worrisome at first. The Wizards got off to like a early lead. Kuzma had like 14 points in the first quarter. Wizards were up by like I think 15 or 14, like halfway through the first quarter. Then the Pelicans scored 47 in the second quarter and won by 11 in the first half. So it's like even, the Wizards are so bad that even when they get hot in the first, half of the first quarter, you're still in it for the first half. And then obviously you talked about the Utah State game, but it was close throughout like we both expected. There were some small runs by both teams, but I think the biggest – I didn't watch the whole game. I watched, like, the second half and, like, the end of the game, but I think the biggest lead other team had was, like, no more than, like, 6 points, 7 points, something like that, maybe 8, somewhere in that range. So it was never completely out of reach for either team. Both teams trading runs and, it was a good thing that obviously both of us, won our bet being on opposite sides of the teams, but still – in a way where we could both win and it happened. So, good to see that.
We'll gladly take that. Like Ari said, even though we're not on the same pick for the same game, us having, the same, different leans, but, both winners. That's all we're looking for here. And Ari had Utah State in the money line. I thought that was a good look as well. But, that line was trending down, in the wrong direction. I was getting a little nervous, so I just wanted to take Santa Clara. Obviously, a home wagon, they don't. I think that was their first loss at home. So, that was nice to see. Obviously, both of us win 4-0 day. We will gladly take that. Going back to the Pelicans, I mean, the Wizards, they came out of nowhere. Obviously, you mentioned Kuzma was lighting up, the first quarter. And then, the Wizards came back down to earth. And then Brandon Ingram kind of just went off throughout that second quarter and throughout that second half, finishing with 40. So, like I said, 2 winners for you, 2 winners for me. We will gladly take those. We're going to move on to today, obviously. Not the greatest card once again. Ugh, ugly Thursday night game, ugly college basketball slate. But here we go. Here are my 2 picks. First, I'm going to go to pretty much the only competitive game of the day, and I'm taking Furman +7 on the road. I think you can get this at -110 on DraftKings. That line went up from 5.5 to 7.5, and now it's going back down to 7. Interesting. I believe that Furman and Tulane are pretty much the same team in terms of offense. They're really offensive teams. Really like to get going in terms of fast breaks and streaky offenses. And Furman, they rely on the 3 a lot, and and that was kind of their main success for last year. If you do remember their tournament run, they were really rely on the 3. And Tulane in this spot, I'm backing Furman. Just obviously, they came off a big win, even though they're playing Bob Jones University and nobody's school. And then Tulane coming off that horrible loss against Mississippi State the other day, lost by 30. They got to go back home, and I would back them in this spot, but I just think Furman, these 2 teams are too similar. Even though Tulane, obviously, they do steal the ball more, I just feel like this Furman team, will definitely keep it a lot more competitive than 7. I think this is going to be the highest scoring game. My other win would be the over, but I just can't really depend on these streaky offenses to keep continuing, especially Tulane, who's going to be in a great bounce back spot. And then for Furman, trying to continue that momentum that they have throughout this season. You look at both teams, Furman does out-rebound a little more. They don't really play that much defense, both teams. So like I'm saying, both, it's kind of like that. There was a game yesterday. It was Seattle and San Francisco. Both teams were mirror images of each other, and Seattle was a 9.5-point dog. They almost ended up winning, but they almost lost. So I'm using that logic to go into this game. Furman and Tulane are kind of very similar teams, and yet Tulane is a 7.5-point favorite at home, which kind of is saying that maybe on a neutral court, bigger favorites, which I just don't believe. So I'm taking Furman +7. I think I think that Furman will definitely make this a lot more competitive. I think they can make it even. I think they could even win this game potentially with how good their offense is right now. So I'm taking Furman plus the points, +7. If my second lead would be the over, but I like Furman in this spot on the road against a Tulane team that has a very dynamic offense. It's very hit or miss. So give me give me Furman +7. That line has grown from 5.5 to 7.5. Now it's going back down the other way, so I would take it at 7. If it does go back up to 7.5, greatly take it. I think it's going to be, less than 10 points. I don't think Tulane really gets a huge lead in this game unless Furman's offense just does not show up, and that's kind of what we're depending on. But Furman has one of the more consistent offenses in the country, so I do like Furman +7. And then in the ugliest game of the night, Chargers Raiders, I'm just taking the under 34.5. We already found out Keenan Allen's out. We just found out that Josh Jacobs is probably not playing, and then Devontae Adams is already questionable. Those are the 3 best offensive players on the field. If you take those 3 out, who else is going to be catching the ball? Other than Austin Eckler, who's probably going to have the box stacked against him tonight because they know that Easton Stick is going to be making, his first start of the season with Justin Herbert officially ruled out for the season. It's just going to be an ugly game. I know it's going to be an ugly game. The Raiders have been 3-point favorites the whole time. That's my second lean, but I just can't. I just don't know what this Raiders team is going to be looking like. Obviously there's so many questions with Devontae Adams. There's questions with Josh Jacobs, and I don't want to back a team that is dealing with a bunch of injuries right now. And then on the other side, same thing. Easton Stick. Justin Herbert's not there. Keenan Allen's not going to be there. He's out. All they're going to rely on is pretty much Austin Eckler and then a lot of Quentin Johnson and Gerald Everett. And I just can't back myself to actually, pick a side in this game. I just think this is going to be a really ugly Thursday night game. We saw the lowest under the game in that same building, not even a few days ago, with the Vikings and Raiders with, the same kind of quarterbacks. And I think, the Chargers, even though they have a slightly worse defense than the Vikings, I do think that this game is just going to be very, field goal oriented. These offenses aren't going to really be moving down the field as much, if Josh Jacobs and Devontae Adams are not playing. And that's kind of the main factor here. But I still like this under 34.5 if they are playing. I think the Chargers have been playing a lot better defensively recently. And I think that, this game is going to be really ugly. I think it's going to be, that line is going down. And I think the books adjusted it for a reason because they just know it's going to be an ugly game. So those are my 2 picks today. I'm keeping it easy. I'm taking Furman +7 in college. I think that's going to be one of the better games. Furman could win outright, but I'm not going to take that. I think just the 7 points is a great look right there. And then I'm taking the Chargers Raiders under 34.5. That's also minus 110. I just think it's going to be an ugly game. You have Easton Stick and Aiden O'Connell, the matchup nobody asked for and nobody wanted on a Thursday night football game. But we're just taking the system here. Obviously, primetime under has been a big system for us all season, and along with the fact that there's a lot of questions with both of these offenses. So I'm going to take two of those picks today: Furman +7, Chargers Raiders under 34.5. Ari, what are you cooking up for us on this Thursday?
Yeah, I'm going the ugly route here. I'm backing Easton Stick and when the Chargers +3, sprinkling on the money line. Obviously it's ugly, but I think the Raiders' zone defense is one where, I think Stick can take advantage of to an extent, not like a huge game. I definitely lean the under as well, total wise, but I think, I trust the Chargers defense a little bit more between the two sides. I think obviously Crosby, you have to manage him on the defensive line for the Raiders, but other than that, I trust the Chargers defense more overall. I do think Adams is expected to play. Last I heard, it was just an illness he was dealing with. So it's usually an illness doesn't keep a player out from playing. But Jacobs is not expected to play, so it'll be Zamir White in the backfield and Abdullah. It's hard to have a ton of reasoning when it's Easton Stick making his first start, obviously, but Aiden O'Connell's on a short leash for the Raiders. Pierce is already talking about benching him. He's going to start, but he's on a short leash. And it ultimately comes down to me trusting the defense of the Chargers a tad bit more than the Raiders. And, the Raiders' zone defense being one where, I think Sick can do enough to get the Chargers the win here, or at least cover. But I think that they have a pretty good chance to win as well. So I'm going with that in the NFL game. And then the NBA late night, the Kings backing the beam at home, coming off a tough loss against the Clippers where pretty much everybody struggled. They didn't even reach 100 points as a team in that game. This is mostly, not that home court means as much in the NBA as it does in college, obviously, but I'm just mostly backing the Kings. They played the Clippers in LA, so obviously they're, obviously a small travel. I think the Thunder are traveling from OKC, so a bit more travel for OKC. And, the Kings losing last game, I think I like them even more here in a bounce back spot. 2-point favor. I'm taking them on the money line here at minus 125. Chargers +3, sprinkle money line, and then the Kings on the money line in the NBA tonight.
Yeah, you mentioned the Chargers. Look, they are playing, like I said, they're playing the better defense. The only reason I just can't back him is because Brandon Staley, what a guy he is, and I think he's definitely one of the coaches on the hot seat this offseason. But when you talk about the Raiders defense, with you neutralize Max Crosby, there's really not much to that defense. So, and then I think Easton Stick can pick apart, the Raiders zone defense, maybe just checking it down, relying on the guys maybe like Austin Eckler. Hopefully, I don't have hands. Quentin Johnson can finally have his hands again. But we'll see.
They connected a bit last week, Stick and Quentin. So
yeah, I'm gonna say maybe it's that second team pizzazz or whatever it is. But I do like the Chargers +3. Like it kind of coincides with my under pick. I think it's gonna be an ugly game, and with that, I think the Chargers defense is playing like I said, a lot better than the Raiders defense right now in terms of getting to the quarterback. You mentioned Aiden O'Connell already on the short leash, just because his quarterback, especially after last week, not even putting up a single point. You kind of have to be in a quarterback, situation where, your starting guy on a 4 days rest is going to be on short leash. So I do like the Chargers +3 as a lean. I'm obviously, like I said, I'm taking under. Money line is a great sprinkle as well. But, I just can't back Brandon Staley in that offense. It's obviously, you said, ugliest game of the day. But, I think the Chargers +3 is also a great look. Coincides with my under. Then the Kings on the money line, you mentioned it. This is a great bounce back for them at home. Home, even though home court is not as big of an advantage, as college, it plays precedent, especially for Sacramento, one of the greater, fully attended NBA arenas. Sacramento fans come out, and, this is going to be one of those games, Thursday night game against OKC. Both of these teams are playing really well right now, obviously, but I like the Kings in this spot at home. And off that bounce back spot against LA, they didn't even reach 100. I think their offense comes back home in a familiar setting and shows out against this OKC team. I like those two picks for you, Ari. So Ari's two picks, Chargers +3, sprinkle in the money line along with the Kings on the money line tonight in the NBA. Going back to mine, I'm just taking the under in that game, 34.5 between the Chargers and Raiders, and then I'm taking Furman +7 on the college basketball court tonight against Tulane. Those are my 2 picks. Those are Ari's 2 picks. You can find all of these picks once again on our Twitter below at AKP Sports Talk. Full card and video will be posted later. But that's going to do it for this episode. That is Ari. I'm Curry. We'll be back tomorrow. We got a loaded card for you tomorrow because we got college football on Saturday, yes, and NFL on Saturday. We got 2, so we're going to have a lot of content for you this Saturday and Sunday.
And on Saturday, Arizona and Purdue as well in college basketball.
Hey, this is the. I mean, we have had the ugliest slate for a long time to get to the weekend, and we're finally here. So tomorrow we're gonna have a big episode. Obviously, we got the biggest matchup of the college basketball season, as Ari just mentioned, Arizona Purdue. We have great NFL games on Saturday. Obviously, bowl season will be starting on Saturday for college football. But we're gonna have all of those picks and more coming tomorrow. But that's gonna do it for us for right now. That's Ari. I'm Korea. We'll see you guys tomorrow.